Welcome to week 68, book 68. And this one is the second in the series of Balzac that I have. And this one is called A Study of Woman. Now, as you may recall, Balzac is a French writer, wrote mostly in the 1830s and 1840s. And what he wrote mostly a one large collection called the Human Comedy. And what this is a collection of something between 100 and 120 different works, all that contain references to the same group of people, all of which have the same characters. Now, they don't have all the exact same characters, but for instance, you might have a novel about two characters in one book in which they go to a party in which a character from another book is in attendance. And that character is not a major player in this one novel, but they are a major player in other places. So that's what it is there's like a family world. There's a world in which all of these novels take place. Okay, and this is the second one. And it contains a study of woman, another study of woman, La Grande Bretèche, which is a sequel to another study of woman, Peace in the House, The Imaginary Mistress, Albert Severius, A Woman of 30, A Forsaken Lady, Le, Granden, Le Grenadier, The Message, and Gobsek. Okay, so what is all that? Well, Balzac has continued here with his focus on people's lives, and particularly as this title may suggest, and as the titles of these works may suggest, with the specific lives of women. And what is he focused on here? Well, the first couple ones are set in salons, and it is people talking about, gossiping basically about stories about women they knew and things of this nature. And that is what's going on with those. And, you know, what I really want to focus on here is some of the later ones. The Imaginary Mistress is an interesting one. It involves a woman who marries a Polish count, and this count has a very, very, very close male friend who works as his servant, basically. And as the story continues, you find out more and more and more about this servant. And the lady and this servant basically become enraptured with each other. But remember, this guy is her husband's good friend. And so in order to avoid getting caught up in some kind of indiscretion with the woman that he loves, he creates an imaginary mistress. He goes out and finds a woman in the theater who he could plausibly have fallen in love with and just makes up a story that he's fallen in love with her. And he spreads this around and courts her and things like this and never touches her, never has anything to do with it. He's not interested, but he makes it look like he is from the outside. And this fools the woman completely. And in fact, at one point, it even appears that her husband has an affair with this woman, possibly. It's not clear, but it could be. And so Balzac here is looking at um, that situation going on. And this is where Balzac is so much more interesting sometimes than he may appear, because he's not writing about young women. He's writing about women of a certain age. And in fact, that's a phrase that comes from Balzac. He's interested in the woman of 30. He says quite clearly that young women have no character. It's not until a woman reaches her 30s that she begins to experience life and have character. You can contrast this completely with something like the Jane Austen marriage plots, where her stories end with marriage, whereas Balzac's really pick up with marriage and go from there. And that's what happens again and again throughout here. One of the more interesting stories in many ways in here is the one called, in fact, A Woman of 30. This starts with a young girl who falls in love with a soldier. And her father recommends her not to get involved with this guy, that it's not going to work out, that he is all flash and circumstance and has no substance. But she gets involved with him anyway. And he turns out to be horrible. And she knows this within a year, but her father has now passed, and she's stuck in a loveless marriage. Now, this is very interesting. At the time period, Balzac could not write certain things, but he was very interested in accurate details. So she's in a loveless, unsatisfying marriage where she is forced to do things for him. And some of these things are unnatural. So, what is going on here? Well, we don't know. We kind of have to read between the lines a little bit. And bear in mind, we also have to, for me, read across the cultures. This is French culture, not American or English culture. So I know a whole lot less about specific details about that kind of thing. And also, I have to read against translation and the morals of the day and in 1904 when this was translated. So, could the original be more explicit? Maybe. Less explicit? Maybe. I don't know. But there's definitely a sense in which there is some sort of sexual incompatibility here. And it might just be that she's just not excited by him. It's not clear, but it could be that simple. In any case, the story continues, and she reaches the age of 30, and she moves on, and she stays with this husband, but she takes on a lover eventually, and she has a child by this lover apparently, and then the child dies, and she's in mourning, and then she has other kids by her husband apparently, maybe by the lover, it's not clear, but the first child, the daughter from her husband, is. Yeah, she has no love for this child. This is just a leech to her, and she makes it pretty clear. So a weird moment happens where a guy covered in blood knocks on the door one night, and because remember the husband is sort of feckless and not really bold and sort of all appearance, no reality. Um, he is bowled over by this guy's will to power, I guess, and his machismo or something, and lets the guy in and hides him up in the upstairs room. The daughter that the mother doesn't like, goes up and sees him. She's immediately attracted to him. Turns out he's a murderer. The gendarmes are coming to get him. They hide him, but as he's leaving, after the police leave, the daughter says, "I'm going with him. I love him. I'm going with him." And she does. And then that they're done for a while. We don't see anything more about them for a while. Then later on, the father, the feckless guy, he loses all his money. That's the only thing he had to his name was money, and he lost it all. So he goes overseas to repair his finances, and he's coming back rich when his ship is taken over by pirates, attacked by pirates. And guess who the leader of the pirates are? It's his daughter's husband. And his daughter is there with her kids on the boat. And they have a weird kind of reunion. This pirate is ruthless. He kills everyone else and sinks the boat because of safety. And then that interlude ends. And then we skip forward another like 10 years or so. And this young woman has uh, passed. This young woman brings her daughter to her mother, and she passes away. And the grandmother raises the daughter, and the daughter goes after a worthless man, just like her mother did, or something like that. Anyway, it's a fascinating story. It's up and down. It's back and forth. It's weird. Yeah, the pirate thing seems to come out of nowhere. But here's the thing: I'm pretty sure that in this story, Balzac wrote the prototypical bad boy pirate romance. Um, Unbelievable, but that apparently is what he did. I look at another story in here, um, Gobsek, the last one. Gobsek is a very interesting story. It has some threat of becoming anti-Semitic. And again, there's an issue with how it was translated. I don't know, but it is about a moneylender who happens to be Jewish and also happens to be very miserly. And it deals with a situation where, at the very end, after Gobsek has passed away, they go into his lodgings and they find a room full of all the stuff people paid him, the food, the fruit, all of these kinds of things. And they're sitting there and just a big, huge pile just rotting and stinking to hell because he never did anything with it. He wouldn't part with it. He wanted to keep it, but he kept it to the point where it was rotten and no good to anyone, not even him. And so it's some kind of cautionary tale about greed and about the lengths that someone who is greedy will go. Now I said it could be anti-Semitic. Well, if we go back and we think about Fagin in Oliver Twist, that's clearly an anti-Semitic portrait by an author Dickens, who later uh, tried to make up for his anti-Semitism. In this one, the character is Jewish, but there's strong indications the way Balzac writes it, or at least it's the way it's translated, that these are not seen as characteristic or traits of either A, moneylenders, or B, Jews. It is this particular moneylender, Gobsek. Gobsek, by the way, will apparently make other appearances in Balzac's literature. So, Volume 2 of Balzac, worth reading? Yeah, it was fun. Some of it was, not the best, but that's okay. This is not considered to be one of the better ones, by the way. A Woman of 30 is not considered to be a great one. It's a patchwork of like not six, about three or four short stories that Balzac slightly rewrote to make them connect. And Albert Savarus, one of the larger texts in here, is normally seen as one of his lesser novels. Um, so yeah, fun, but yeah,